Once we get off the beaten path of believing there's more to life than just the material reality, then there are a lot of literature and teachings and other things out there. And I want to create some distinctions here between spiritual and metaphysical and whatever other words people want to use. And there's some argument over which word applies to which. I'm not interested in the semantics right now. But I want to distinguish between stuff that just basically gives a lot of information, tells a lot of stories about Atlantis, stories about the pyramids, stories about whatever else that give information. And that information may be true, some of it. I'm not saying it's not, but give information. But it's really just as someone I used to know would say, a guy called Baba. Everybody called him Baba. He said, don't call me that. But this guy was the real deal. He said, well, for a lot of people, it's entertainment. It's like, what should we do tonight? Should we go to a movie? Should we go drinking? Or should we have a past life reading? Okay, and that's okay. That is okay. But there's information that really is just not going to do anything for you. But then there's information that gives you something where you actually are going to do something in your own life based on it. You're going to make decisions because you see things differently. You're going to maybe adopt certain practices. And it could be about the same things. It could be about Atlantis. It could be about the pyramids. It could be about whatever. But what it's offering is actually going to make a difference in your life. And so, for example, there are a lot of teachings about, like the law of attraction was a good example. Now we're getting to something that's not just information. It is purporting to tell us the laws of the universe. Now, the law of attraction was something that was presented in a fairly shallow way and didn't work for a lot of people. But it's still an example of something where it's saying, well, you can use this in your life. And there are higher laws in the universe that we really should know that affect our lives just as much as the law of gravity. And so you have teachings that give you practical things to use, but they're not really about changing your fundamental who you are. So then you get in the realm of spiritual and religious teachings, where they're saying things like forgive, adopt forgiveness, patience, tolerance, equanimity, and actually changing who you are and trying to even have a higher consciousness of things, not just react from our human instinctive level. And so if I can do a short summation of saying, okay, there's just information, then there are teachings that you can use, but they're not about fundamentally shifting who you are. And then there are teachings about becoming the highest version of yourself you can be, which ultimately culminate in teachings about accessing the divinity within ourselves, the part of ourselves that is a part of all that is, that it does have a God self in the New Age sense of God self, not in the biblical sense. And so that's important things. I believe that everyone's highest job, and I use the word job specifically, in life is to be the best person we can be, to transform ourselves, to learn, to grow. I believe no matter what else you're doing, we do things for work, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. But our ultimate job is on ourselves. And so understanding those differences between just information, metaphysical laws, and then higher spiritual teachings. And while I'm talking about higher spiritual teachings and religious teachings, even looking at religious teachings, a lot of them are simply information, stories, and that can be beneficial if we learn from the allegory of them, if they affect us in some way. But even those can be just turned into information and entertainment. So a lot of it is coming from us, how we're approaching things. And so perhaps the highest thing is, do we adopt the goal of becoming the highest version of ourselves? Okay, some thoughts there on January 3rd.